Hmm? So, to reach the highest form of meditation is not the destruction of the senses. The senses will remain, but reaching that higher stage, the senses will be guided differently, will have a totally different perspective. And what it would take away from you is the craving, the mother of all miseries. People suffer in this world because of craving. And there are many objects of craving. It does not necessarily mean food, that you crave for lobster dinner, or you crave for chicken or turkey or pork chops or whatever. But craving also has so many other forms. You crave for wealth, you crave for relationships, you crave for, you name it. Everything is based upon craving. And these cravings are accentuated by the senses and their counterparts. So you lose craving. You lose lust, for example, which is also a craving. You crave for what you want to do. But yet you can do the same thing without craving. You see, and you know that you've reached a step higher. Yeah, you can make sensual love, have sensual love with your beloved, and the act would seem the same in divine love. And yet it is the same act. The one is filled with craving, animal passion. The other is also filled with passion, but divine passion, where you want to find mergence with the object, with the beloved, so that the object and the subject become one. That is, divine love beyond craving. So you still do the same things. Like the old Zen story, which I might have told you before, I can't remember. The Chela asked the Zen master, what do you do, before you became enlightened? So the Zen master replied, I chop wood, I make fire, and I cook food. And what do you do now after enlightenment? So the Zen master replies, I chop food, I make fire, and I cook food. Same action even after reaching enlightenment. But the action, although it is the same to the ordinary eyes, assumes a great difference to the enlightened one. Before, wood was just wood, fire was just fire, and food was just food. But now, the wood becomes God, and through the wood, fire is made. So, the wood is sacrificed to the fire, which is also God, and food cooked on the fire is also divine, also God. So the wood, the fire, and the food become divine. And you see the divinity. That is when you rise above the senses and become enlightened. Right. So the wood and the fire and the food assumes a different perspective altogether. Now, after reaching the highest stage of meditation, you would want to know what happens to me, and how can I know that I am beyond meditation? I'm beyond the senses. You cannot know. You cannot know that you have transcended. You can only judge it by comparison to what you regarded a certain object to be before enlightenment, and what that same object seems to you after enlightenment. So, the mind would analyze. But when you are beyond the mind, when you have transcended the limitations of the mind and have become limitless, then how can the finite mind ever comprehend that which is infinite? So that knowledge of enlightenment is not confined to the mind, because it cannot be confined. It cannot be imprisoned. So when that stage is reached, nirvana, enlightenment, self-realization. Self-realization is when the self realizes itself, and the real self within you is beyond the mind and the senses. So therefore it remains at self and exists in its own power. Everything you see around you in the world requires an external power. But when a person is realized, he does not need any external power to make the car of his life go. It runs. You don't need to fill in gas. It runs on its own. You see? So therefore we call it self-existent, non-dependent. And yet in that non-dependency, you enjoy everything that you have done before in a totally independent way instead of a dependent way. So that existence experiences itself. There is no outside experiencer to judge it, to say that I am self-realized. There's no outside power to tell you that you are realized. But you just know experientially that you are realized, and your measure could only be that calmness, that laughter bubbling in you by the cup that flows over. And when you observe these things, you will know that you are existing in existence by existence itself.